We are in Judges. We're in chapter 13 of Judges, and this is Samson. Samson here. Samson is a fascinating story. And this is why, so in previous weeks, I kind of talked about, I think we talked about last week with the guy who's making the sacrifice and all that. And that Samson, I think, is the complete evidence that we should look at this stuff a little tongue-in-cheek, where it seems like it doesn't say that Samson is righteous. It just kind of says he's strong and blessed. Like there's this weird connection to God and all that stuff. But Samson is pretty much straight evil. That's kind of the, how it's given to us. And I think he's kind of a stand-in for Israel themselves, is that they now view themselves as that they are alone in all of this. They struggle with the wiles of the Philistines. They do all these things, and they're just trying to save themselves, all that stuff. And so, I shouldn't be giving you guys the stuff beforehand, but it's wild how the stories of Samson when we're kids are given to us as this great and grand thing. But when you actually read the story, you're like, this stuff's terrible. That whole
this is nothing like the movie.
Yeah. This stuff is terrible. And I think that's why these books like the Judges are so fascinating, because they're staring at the problem in the face, and they're saying a lot about Israel during this time. But and I think we can see our own selves and our own peoples as well. So we'll get into Samson. We'll see how far we kind of get through it. I doubt we'll get through the whole thing, because it's 3, although maybe it's 4 chapters. We'll see. I'm already starting behind, and so listen. I don't need your judgment. I don't need your judgment. All right, like that.
You have all forgiveness.
Yeah. All right, so let's start reading here. Oh no, now you can judge. Now you can judge me, because it's I'm not on the right page. Here we go. We hit this button, optimize from video. We hit that button, then this one. All right, so Judges chapter 13. Let me know if the echo does not go away.
Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years.
Echo didn't go away.
Now there was a certain man from Zoar.
All right, I was worried about that. 2 seconds. Let's see, audio settings. All right, well. All right, now let me know if it doesn't.
Of the family of the Danites, whose name was Noah, and his wife was barren, and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her,
Indeed now, you are barren, and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines.
So the woman came and told her husband.
A man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of the angel of God, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. And he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death.
Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said,
O my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born.
that God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband and said to him,
Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me.
So Manoah arose and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said to him,
Are you the man who spoke to this woman?
I am.
Now, let your words come to pass. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work?
For all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe.
Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you.
Though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord.
for Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord,
What is your name? That when your words come to pass, we may honor you.
Why do you ask my name? Seeing it is wonderful.
So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to the Lord. And he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. It happened, as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, and Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife,
We shall shortly die, because we have seen God.
The Lord had desired to kill us. He would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands. Nor would he have shown us all these things. Nor would he have told us such things as these at this time.
So the woman bore a son, and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Mahanaim, between Zodah and Eshtaol.
Okay.
Now
All right. So what stood out? Because there's a bunch of stuff that stands out to me, and I could be wrong. I'm not though. That's so. What stood out to you in this?
Echo of Sarah.
Echo was Sarah, like Abraham and Sarah. I was right there. Why?
Again, unlike a person could give birth.
Yes. As soon as you see anybody who's barren in the Bible like that, ears should start perking up.
And divine intervention. We facilitate
Yeah.
a purpose.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right there. I think this whole chapter it kind of sounds like Abraham and Sarah, and like the beginning of God's peace, like all that stuff.
So about him calling the angel wonderful. Doesn't that remind you of what Jesus said? He was wonderful counselor.
Oh yeah, like the wonderful counselor. So that word, I was looking at the notes as we were going in here. So in the Hebrew language, like that is like wonderful. It's like this kind of awe-inspiring numericity of divinity is what it says. So like this kind of just this all like kind of huge awesomeness kind of idea. that is going on with that word wonderful. So it's like, so he's basically saying like his name is that, you know, it's kind of all encompassing kind of idea. So that's very interesting. You can see they're very worried about it after he kind of reveals his name like that. Yeah. So what else stands out to you in this?
I thought it was. But Noah didn't know it was an angel.
They thought it was a man at first?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how many prophets run around?
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. So like that's like, so they're like, it looks like a man and all that. And then, yeah, they have like the fire stuff going on.
Yeah, and he was looking to do offerings to him, not offerings to God.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's that, it, you know, and I think that's kind of as I sit there and think about that point, that's kind of common in a lot of the, like, I think Abraham and Lot, like, they don't want to make like things to them, but how they're treating when Lot's in the town and those angels visit them, they're treating them in much the same manner. You know, it's like, they're like, yeah, we'll even give our daughters away to protect you guys. Like we're treating them and it seems kind of in a rhyming sense.
If I can interrupt.
Yeah.
And surprise myself. The note, forgive me, because the print is very small. In a similar situation with Abraham and Sarah, the angel of the Lord did share a human meal in light of their faith. But motives were not pure.
Yeah.
This angel took offense.
Yeah.
In this case, that you would try, I think the term is manipulate or bribe in the notes.
So, okay. So
that they would deign to provide an ordinary meal to an angel.
Okay.
The angel's nose was a little bit out of the joints.
Okay.
I thought that it was, I mean, they obviously didn't realize it was an angel when they offered him food because he didn't need to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
And that's, and I do like, and yeah, like they're definitely like the human lookingness, you know, it reminds us of that council that Abraham and Sarah had, like they're in Genesis doing all this stuff, like it, and I think all that's intentional, like, cause there's all these like human looking angel things running around that are getting understood as being God and all that. And I think that's intentional. And I think it's very intentional in this with the birth of Samson, because I think there's a bit of don't read too far into what I'm saying here, but a bit of a parable nature to the story of Samson and what is actually being told here. And I think it's very intentional that this looks a lot like Abraham and Sarah. Like that's, and if you remember, Abraham and Sarah is the beginning of God's people, you know? Because like as I'm sitting here going, well, before I talk, like did anyone notice anything else?
I did 40 years.
The what?
40 years.
40 years.
Yeah. The very first
Phil's friends for
Okay.
40 years.
illustrate.
Yeah. Done 40 years. Yeah. I was still worried about my audio. I missed like that. Yeah. So again, you're seeing like that number is always important when it's sticking out there. And like we're seeing things are happening. Like that's a good one. What else kind of stood out?
I'm thinking that because in the beginning it didn't really say if Zora and his wife were observing sin having to do with the Lord, or if they were following, with idols and the paganism and things like that. So maybe they're not recognizing the angel as an angel had to do with the fact that the people had gone so far away from God.
It's like that could be, and I think a similar thing could be said about Abraham too. Like that's because it's like the previous story, the sacrificing his daughter, and making deals with God really shows that they don't know who God is. Like that they don't know how God works and all this stuff. I think as I was reading it this time, it sounds like Abraham, but it also sounds like either kosher or circumcision, the Nazirite vow. Like they got to watch the eat, watch all this stuff, remaining clean and all that. Like that's, and it's like, and I think what's going on here is that it's this parable about Israel, that Samson is standing in for Israel. That Abraham and Sarah, like it's rhyming all with them, and they basically birthed, this Isaac, but it goes much slower, but they basically birthed, Israel into there. And I think Samson is kind of indicative of that. And so he keeps talking about how special it is, and Israel is also special, but what does Israel end up doing with that specialness? And I think that's where it's getting into. And so which is like I was kind of preparing myself for that, but I hadn't really actually read. And like that's like like you have verse 5, which like no razor should be upon his head, all that stuff. God comes out of the womb, like sounds like circumcision, like an outward sign of a blessing type of thing. And then like you should not drink or eat anything unclean. That sounds like that too, like circumcision or kosher, like that's so like I don't know, like that's I thought it was. Then the Lord ascending in the midst of the flame of the altar, like that's what the verse 20. Like that's how the angel or the Lord or whatever it is ascends back up. Like again, that's like you have all this ideas throughout Judaism of the sacrifices going up to the Lord. But I don't know if this is valid or not, but like where my mind went first was like burning bush imagery. Like that's that kind of, I don't know if that's valid or not, but my mind definitely went there. And so like that's with all these things. So I don't, were there any other ideas along with this? It just kind of, it lines up a little too well to me for it to not be on accident.
Well, as you often suggest, you may be right.
Yeah. I could, well, no, my suggestion is I could be wrong.
It looks at the end. It looks at the end that Zora's wife's name was Eshtaol.
Oh, yeah.
They don't often give the name of the wives and stuff, but they waited to the end of the chapter to tell it.
Yeah. So let's so that is interesting. They don't mention her name to the very end. So let's do chapter 14. We actually may breeze through these things. All right, 14.
Now, so
I'm sorry, Zoom. I'm not doing my job. There we go.
Samson went down to Timnah, and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother.
I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife.
Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?
Get her for me, for she pleases me well.
But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother, and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat. Still he had nothing in his hurt. He he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. He took some of it in his hands and went along, eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for young men used to do so. And it happened, when he saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Samson said to them,
Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing.
Pose your riddle, that we may hear it.
And out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet.
Not for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife,
Entice your husband, that he may explain the riddle to us. Or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. But you invited us in order to take what is ours. Is that not so?
Then Samson's wife wept on it.
You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me.
Look, I have not explained it to my father or my mother, and so should I explain it to you?
Now she had wept on him the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the 7th day, before the sun went down,
What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?
and he said to them,
If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would have not solved my riddle.
Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him like say, that he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, leading to the stood there upon him, and gave exchanges of clergy to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man.
Live. Okay. All right. What stood out to you in this one?
Samson was a temper.
What'd you say?
Samson was a temper.
Yeah, he does have a temper.
Overreaction is thematic about this book. What verse does something wrong with 40,000 people are executed?
Yeah.
It's true. Certainly on a smaller scale, we have the same thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, he makes a aside about his wife's behavior, and then he kills 30 people.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Yeah, listen, he's the best guy. The best. Like, that's that's like that. Yeah, the overreaction there.
Do I properly see the suggestion that no one really understood that God's purpose was to use Samson against the Philistines, which is why he encouraged him to become involved and intermarry with him? Is that the correct reading of this?
I think
That's the way I read it also. But I don't know that that's correct, because I could be wrong.
well, that's kind of that's the reading what I'm getting. Like, and this is brand new for me. I've always struggled with what to do with Samson, and I was kind of reading some things around it. And I was like, oh, like a parable. Like that, like, no, this makes sense now. Because it explains why he's so strong, why the verses talk about the Lord being with him, all these things, but also why he's such a bad person. You know, like that's and I was like, oh, that's it completely changes some of these things over. And I think like his succumbing to the daughter of the Philistines, like just cannot be stopped from them. Like you read previously, yeah, like they and continually, like they just can't stop hanging out with the Philistines. You know, like they're the best.
Well, the Philistines rule over them at this point too, so they're
Yeah.
sort of captive.
So what you just said there, so that they rule over them. So I'm going to say in public for all to hear some nice, fresh LCMS heresy. All right, like heretical action. All this stuff was. So the non-LCMS view is that this was all like added later and put together later and all that stuff. And I thought it was very interesting, verse 4, in light. But you saying that dominion, that the Philistines had power over them. That's to this too. So, but verse 4 was, his father and mother did not know he was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. And so, if you look at the other view, the heretical view also, this could be like a Babylonian captivity reference too. Like, so that's, like that I thought that was interesting. But like just the Philistines had dominion as well, like that works it all together. But I think it's this story's attempting to explain like why is all this stuff happening all the time? Why is captivities happening? Why are all these other things happening? Type of idea. So that's I think that's kind of interesting. The let's see. So we talked about. I always think it's funny how they like. Why do you have to find a wife amongst the uncircumcised Philistines? Adding the adjective, an adjective of that specificity when you're describing someone, is amazingly comical to me. Like just like like that. That's like, so it makes you laugh. But the one thing that I thought was really funny, that is, and I have a feeling it's even comical back then, but it's especially comical now. Like he tore apart the lion, like how you can tear apart a goat. That's like I haven't torn apart very many goats. Like they, yeah, I clearly haven't lit them. My neighbor, when I was at Bentonville, the neighbor across the street was Muslim, and he always bought a lamb, is what you call it, a young goat from a local farmer, and then he would butcher it once a year. And so like all of that. So I could always tell when he was going. He always had this this butcher bucket and his knives. I'm like, what are you up to? He's like, oh, like we're gonna have lamb next week, and we're gonna have a lamb. Like you'll come over and eat lamb, right? Like, all right, we'd go over and eat lamb. But he was just what he did. He's from Tunisia, but it was just what he did. So maybe that's what they're talking about there. As easily as like just tearing apart a goat. What else stood out to you? There's another thing that stood out to me. I was in, you guys catch.
Chestnut?
Yeah.
When you said that Samson is representing Israel,
Yeah.
the fact that he's willing to take a Philistine wife,
Yeah.
shows he's not following his vows as a Nazarite.
Yeah.
Then the Lutheran Study Bible on 14:9 says Nazarites were forbidden to touch anything dead. So Samson violated the Nazarite vow, and the honey would also have been considered unclean.
Right.
Yet he gave it to his parents without telling them. So he's basically, as you said, like Israel, he goes in and out of following rules.
That's interesting. So keep on going with that, Lee. Why is there honey in the lion carcass?
Well, the land of milk and honey.
Yeah, that was my point. Like that's, and I think that it fits nicely in with what you're saying here too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that he's like, it's almost like Joshua, that they conquered this land, but they keep, but he's just kind of using the honey that he was kind of given there to his own ends, is kind of what you're saying. And that's, I mean, it's complicated. This is all conjecture. Like it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's like there's some, like the honey being in there is very interesting. Like that's, especially when all they do is call that land the land with milk and honey.
I never understood why honey was considered unclean.
Well, it was because it was in the dead tiger or the dead lion.
The dead lion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Up until that point, I didn't realize honey was a problem.
Yeah, it's not.
was
It's
gonna be
not.
like-
It's not. It's not.
This study Bible says, despite all Samson's weaknesses, God used him. He's mentioned in the Bible Hall of Fame in Hebrews as a hero of faith, along with Gideon, Barak, and Jephthah, and we're all in Judges.
Yeah.
And he was the only one who was announced by an angel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I think it's also, like, I really like this connecting him to Israel. Like, because that and that one pen stroke, like, solves a lot of issues with Samson that I have, like, over there, and kind of how he's treated kind of throughout all of that. I think it's all did anyone else have anything on here before I say? Because I could just talk, and that's not good.
Well, it took 7 days to get her to get the riddle answer out of Samson. So
Yeah.
again, set completion.
You got the 7, and you got the 3 stuff too. You got the 3 with the clothing.
Yeah, 30.
Like that's also, the riddle strikes me as funny. Like, and I don't know if this is valid at all, but he's playing games with the Philistines. Like it's not like he's intermarrying with them, playing games with them, like all that stuff, and it ends up kind of leaving him to where it expresses his temper, and he kills all these people. Like that's and doing all that kind of led to that, and there are some hilarious, arguably hilarious lines in here. Like, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have been able to solve the riddle. Like there's a certain biting to that, which is next level. But it's also, he's created this problem. Like that he's created this problem that all of this has happened. Why he's upset is that he's created it. Like that he didn't have to play the game.
Can anyone explain what is the purpose of the mystery of the riddle? How does it
I think it's just,
move the story forward?
I think it's gaining wealth from it. Like that's, I think it's just showing, like, I think it's the games with the Philistines. Like that's, like, I think it's kind of showing that Israel played games with these people, as we saw earlier in Judges.
Doesn't he feel a certain amount of superiority because of his strength?
Yes.
There is smugness in his being.
Yeah.
There is condescension. There's a wink and a nod to everybody. Philistines, or Philistines as it's pronounced.
Yeah.
And his own family, and his wife.
Who we discard right after.
The smugness,
Best man.
Yeah.
the smugness is a good way of putting it. Smugness is a good way of putting it. All right, so let's go on to chapter 15. That's pretty short. So here we go. We may actually be able to do the whole story. That'd be great.
After a while, in the time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat.
Let me go into my wife, into her room.
But her father would not permit him to go in.
I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please, take her instead.
This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them.
Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tail leaves. When he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said,
Who has done this?
Samson, the son-in-law of a Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion.
So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Samson said to them,
Since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you. And after that, I will cease.
So he attacked them, even thigh, with a great glory. But he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Etam. Now the Philistines went up, encamped in Judah, and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said,
Why have you come up against us? We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us.
Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam, and said to Samson,
Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us? As they did to me, so I have done to them.
We have come down to arrest you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines.
Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves.
No, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand. But we will surely not kill you.
And they bound him with 2 new ropes, and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned as fire. His bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said,
With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men.
And so it was, when he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called that place Ramath Lehi. Then he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said,
You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised?
So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out. And he drank. Then his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called its name En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines.
Okay. All right. What stood out?
Samson?
Oh, wait. Don't go yet. Okay. All right. So what stood out to you in that one? Again, this is another display of Samson controlling his anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that there's a section here where it says essentially that the Spirit of the Lord was upon him and the ropes became like charred flax.
Yeah.
Then right after that, he grabs a donkey's jawbone and he kills these people, but it's, I did this, I did that. And he misses the point that God freed him. He turns inward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think right there is the overall message of Samson and what's going on. Like, even when we get to the next chapter here, Samson only is doing things for himself. Even if it means his own destruction. Yeah. Like he's only, like, and that's what I think the connection with Israel is fascinating, is that God's blessing to Abraham is that they'd be a blessing to the entire world, and here it's like a critique of that.
Samson never got it.
Yeah, and Samson never gets it. I don't think Israel does either. Like that's like they're too invested in themselves to see the overall thing of what's going on. So what don't you kind of get from this?
Well, I was surprised in verse 18, that he did say to God, "You have given your servant this great victory." So he did acknowledge that God gave him the victory.
Yeah, but it wasn't a thank you, Lord. It was, yeah, you let me win, so now I'm thirsty, so where's the water?
Yes.
That's more a blame thing.
No, energy.
And also what it reminds me of, like, so that, like, because there's some subtlety to this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because like God split a hollow place, like in there. That's
We heard that before.
so like Moses.
Yeah.
So like there's
The wife, forgetting who it was, her son is about to perish.
oh yeah in the well, let's see, where is that? Genesis, yeah. And so like there's all these things where water kind of like appears here, and it's like, if you remember this cycle, especially the cycle that we have in Judges, where Israel does something and now they're like, oh, we're sorry, we're about to die, all these people are about to kill us, right? And then God does something remarkable to end up doing it. And so what you said earlier about like giving God credit, it sounds just like Israel when they're back, even though they've caused it themselves, they back themselves up against the wall, and God still shows them mercy and all that, even though they're acting out in a very selfish, very, very self-centered thing, because we've said it a bunch of times in Judges already, but the jawbone stuff, like, that's a ridiculous way to kill a bunch of people. It's not a sword, it's not a chariot, it's just it's very badass. Don't get me wrong about that. But it strikes me as Jericho sounding again. That it's miraculous.
It's extraordinary that something as prosaic as a jawbone can slay 3,000 people. I don't find it ridiculous.
Well, that and that ridiculous that I'm talking about is amazing. That's that's also what I see here is that he gets angry and he keeps escalating the situation. Like, even to the point where he's like, yeah, I'll do this. I hurt you guys. You guys hurt me. I'm going to hurt you once more, and then I'm done. That's like every bar fight you've ever seen. If he had stayed down, this wouldn't have gone bad, right? Like that's like that. That's over. Like he doesn't know how to de-escalate at all, and then there's like the people of Judah are even like, dude, you got to stop. Like this is like, and so there's just layers on all these things that I think are. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, but there's these just little revelations like the water being split and him drinking.
It made me think of the Red Sea.
Red Sea, Moses, there's all these times when God has supplied water. That's
He did the jawbone thing. The first thing I thought of, well, he's trying to do a counter to what David did with Goliath with the stone. To prove his strength was something with strength as opposed to smartness.
Well, and so as we get into this and we think about let's get through this last chapter, here, but when we look at, I think what Van said earlier is that he keeps doing it for himself. He's doing it for himself, doing it for himself. And what I think is very interesting is that we just finished, Samuel's and David at the very end. And not everyone agrees with me on this, and that's fine. Everyone has their own opportunity to be wrong. And so it's but David there at the end, when he's choosing of the three punishments, he chooses the one that would affect him the least. And it seems like David is going kind of the same path, and that's kind of the whole thing. And it seems to be Solomon's downfall, is that he just wants greater and greater things for himself and all that. And so I think you're kind of establishing that, and it's all right. This will be a fun sermon with Samson. Okay, all right. Let's see. Let's read this last chapter. Chapter 16.
Now Samson went to Gaza, and saw a harlot there, and went into her. When the Gazites were told,
Samson has come here,
they surrounded the place, and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They were quiet all night.
In the morning, when it is daylight, we will kill him.
And Samson lay low till midnight. Then he arose at midnight, took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the two gateposts, pulled them up, bar and all, and then put them on his shoulder, and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Afterward, it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her,
Entice him, and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. And every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver.
So Delilah said to Samson,
Please, tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you.
If they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dry, then I shall become weak, and be like any other man.
So the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, and she bound him with them. Now men were lying in wait, staying with her in the room, and she said to him,
The Philistines are upon you, Samson.
But she broke the bowstrings as a strand of yellow grass when it touches fire. So the secret of his strength was not known.
Look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now, please, tell me what you may be bound with.
If they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak, and be like any other man.
Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them. and said to him,
The Philistines are upon you, Samson.
and men were lying in wait, staying in the room. But he broke them up his eyes with the frame.
Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with.
If you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom.
So she wove it tightly with the batten of the loom, and said to him,
The Philistines are upon you, Samson.
but he awoke from his sleep and called after him and lifting the web from the loom.
How can you say I loved you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times. You told me where your great strength lies.
But it came to pass, when she pestered him daily with her words, and pressed him, so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart.
No razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak, and be like any other man.
When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines.
Come up once more, for he has told me all his heart.
So the lords of the Philistines came up to her and all the money in their hand. Then she lulled him to sleep on her knees, and called for a man, and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him.
The Philistines are upon you, Samson.
So be a water for this
I will go out as before at other times and shake myself free.
For he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Then the Philistines took him there, and put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza. They bound him with bronze stakes. But he became a grinder in the prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again, after it had been shaven. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to rejoice.
Our God has delivered into our hands Samson, our enemy.
When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said,
Our God has delivered into our hands our enemy, the destroyer of our land, so that the one who multiplied our dead.
So it happened, when their hearts were merry, that they said,
Call for Samson, that he may perform for us.
So they called for Samson from the prison, and he performed for them. And they stationed him between the pillars. Then Samson said to the lad who held him by the hand,
Let me feel the pillars which support the temple, so that I can lean on it.
Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, about 3,000 men and women on the roof, watching while Samson performed. Then Samson called to the Lord,
O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once. O God, that I may, with one blow, take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes.
And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, one on his right and the other on his left.
Let me die with the Philistines.
And he pushed with all his might.
On the midst of it, hard beating, banging, by taking an outline.
And except his staff, on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. And his brothers and all his father's household came down and took him, and brought him up and buried him between Zoda and Eshtaol, in the tomb of his father Manasseh. He had judged Israel 20 years.
Okay. Oh,
Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim,
and it hit.
whose name was Manasseh.
Come on.
And
There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. What do you guys think? What's
Samson may have been strong, but he certainly wasn't very bright.
No, he's not. It's not at all. Not at all. I think that's part of the point. It's definitely part of the point. What? Anything stand out to you guys?
Statement 22, verse 22. After his hair was cut off, it began to grow back. And the first thought I had was, nothing can separate us from the love of God.
Yeah.
That's just
Like that's like, and I thought of that same thing. I wrote God is with them right above that, especially when you look at Samson being a stand-in for Israel. Like that's like it's showing that whole like idea going on there, and that's yeah. I thought about that too. I thought that's good.
What about his last act? You think that he was finally able to see, to do God's will, and that was God's will?
Screaming to get me. It's because of my eyes.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a lot of God's name.
Like he's. It's interesting that like this like last final act, and I don't know what to do with this last final act, because he's like, Lord God, remember me, strengthen me, like let me have this one last blow, and then he goes, so I can take vengeance for my eyes.
yeah.
Like it's like come on, and the eyes. So this is not any of the author's intent. But one of the things that stands out to me in the Gospels is oftentimes Jesus will say a parable, and then he'll go the phrase just left me, but those that have eyes to see, let them see.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, like, are you looking? Like, do you see? Because what happens a lot of times is you'll have a parable, and then someone will get healed at the end of the parable. And I think that's like a description of showing you what's going on, that the parable is showing some kind of deficiency over here, and then God is healing the deficiency. He's saying, like, do you see? Do you see what's going on? And like, that's how Jesus is using that phrase. And I kind of wonder, with him losing his eyes, are the authors going, do you guys see? Like, like Samson's blind to all this, of what's going on. But do you see? And I don't know, because that's how Jesus uses it.
What kind of blindness has plagued Israel forever? They have eyes that don't see.
Yeah.
Samson's the last body.
Always thinking that it was like, is he going to wake up to the fact that he's his own worst enemy?
Yeah.
I don't know whether he had a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah, I like that.
He never woke up to that, right?
Yeah. So right away in verse 1, we get a classic line where he goes to Gaza and he saw a harlot there.
Yeah.
And that, even in Judges, we have, in Israel played the harlot with the Philistines. Yeah. Like that's, that's like a direct line. It's a direct line there.
All right.
That playing the harlot, and then and I think with his hair, it goes hand in hand with what Lee said earlier, is that the hair is God's protection type of thing. And so going into that, going back to my very correct view of why the Babylonian captivity happened, is that the way I view it is God's like, well, if you want to be them so bad, here you could just be them. You could just, if you want to be Babylon so bad, you want to be big, important, and all these things, like if you want to be so bad, then you can just be them. What happens to Samson's hair here feels very similar to that. Like that's where he keeps just playing around with it, and like his Philistine wife is like begging him, like, oh, like you tricked me again, you terrible, like that, you don't love me, and like all that stuff. It's not a perfect 1-to-1, but it let's see. And it also, I've heard this from a few people, and I think it's kind of interesting. Verse 16 and 17, and it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him, so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all of his heart and said to her, no razor has ever come to my head. I've been a Nazarite since my mother's, like all that stuff. Does he actually believe that?
No.
Or is he just listing off stuff?
Mm-hmm.
That he thinks his power is unlimited, and that he'll never be captured, that nothing will ever happen. Because then the verse, was it 18 and 19, like, she came once more, the lords of Philistines came, verse 19, then she lulled him to sleep on her knees and called for a man and had shave off the 7 locks off of his head. 7's an interesting number there. Right. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said on him, I don't know if this is valid or not, but with how she began to torment him, but she lulled him to sleep and all that stuff, sounds kind of like how Kings talks about the wives of Solomon. Like that there's these extra things. I don't know if that's valid. I've just we're throwing stuff up against the wall, like over there.
I can't help myself. It could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not that.
That's one.
And so that's for like, I used to say that phrase all the time in sermons. I could be wrong. I'm not. I could. That's so we're referencing that. Let's see here. So they plucked out his eyes. The whole God is with him. Then the Philistines, and I think we begin to see the turn here, call to Samson that he may perform for us.
Yeah.
That they, the conquering people, then begin to act out in pride. And you see this act of Samson, which is obviously one of power, and we see the power comes from God and all these things where he brings him down. And I kind of wonder if we're meant to ask the question at the end of this story of Samson. It's like, are we doing this just for ourselves? Because it's obviously God who is doing this for him. And like that whole thing, he's doing it for his eyes, but do you have eyes to see this story? That it's actually God that's doing all of these things, and to not do them just for yourself. And because we're going to see in the next couple chapters that we're going to get to in the middle of October, that it is that he just goes off the rails after this in Judges. It just goes, it is disgusting at the end. And so that's, and they're just, everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes, and Israel is, and all those things. So.
This one has an interesting comment. In the comic strip character Pogo's immortal words, we have met the enemy and he is us.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's a good description of Samson too. And like this, doing this study has really given me a different sense to his eyes. And that I think it's kind of wondering about a cultural blindness to how we're using things around us. And it's like, do you see? It's actually God who's doing all this. but you're just using it for yourself, type of thing. So that's like that. That's I don't know. That's kind of it got me like doing this got me excited for the Samson sermon that we got coming up next year.
Well, just calm down.
Like it's I think it'll be pretty good. Maybe. Oftentimes when I think it's going to be really good, it ends up being trash. Like that's
Less comfortable.
But good deal. But that's where we are in Judges. We start forgiving challenge next week, and so for everyone watching on YouTube, it's recorded. Hopefully the sound was better today.